I hope you're having a great day. Welcome to the Ricky Matthews Show from the Citizens Bank studio as we continue to celebrate all the amazing people across the state of Mississippi who've worked so hard to help make Mississippi a better place to live, work, and play. We've got a great show today, and I'll come to that here in a second. I want to share with you a quote that popped up in my digital history book. Most of us know the science fiction writer H.G. Wells. He was born back in 1866, believe it or not. That's amazing to think of him in that way. But he said this along the way. He said, sometimes you have to step outside the person you've been and remember the person you were meant to be, the person you want to be, the person you are. I thought that was pretty powerful. I'll read it again. Sometimes you have to step outside the person you've been and remember the person you were meant to be, the person you want to be, the person you are. So, sometimes we're not focused enough on just being us. And there's a lot to be said for authenticity. And one of the great things about this show is we really get to find out a lot about the people. We know these people through their public faces, but we don't really know them behind the scenes and what their real stories are. And you see a lot of authenticity on this show. That's why I love the long form aspect to it. Hey, listen, if you watched recently, well, first of all, regular listeners know this, but Peter Greenberg was on my show, and he is the guy he's a great producer and writer, and he's the star of America's Hidden Coast, Mississippi, this recent documentary that came out that's going to be played literally all around the world. I mean, and it was, listen, the first they've done Hidden Coast all over the globe, but he had not done a Hidden Coast in America, and he picked Mississippi to be first. So if you haven't seen it, go to PBS and look it up. And if you have seen it, you know that it was extraordinarily expertly done. And I really enjoyed my time on this show talking to Peter Greenberg. But if you saw it, one of the people that was featured in that show, someone we had on our list, is a guy who has a terrific story, been a great leader in Hancock County over a number of years. He actually retired as a chancery clerk in Hancock County back in 2023, which is just last year. He was featured, and he was featured because of his unique family connection to some old cities in Hancock County. And it was a great reminder to me that I got to have Tim Kellar. I got to have him on this show and tell his story and chat about leadership and Katrina and anything else that might be on his mind. So without any further ado, let me welcome my old friend, Tim Kellar, to the Ricky Matthews Show. Tim, how you doing, my friend?
Good to be with you, Ricky.
So where are you sitting right now?
I'm actually in my breakfast nook in my home on the county line between Hancock and Pearl River County, so in the extreme northwestern part of Hancock County.
Well, look, we do share a lot. You and I both have a major love of the outdoors. I spend a lot of time in the Mississippi Delta. You do too. I like to say that it's literally my second home. People say, "Oh, how's your hunting camp doing?" And you can call it a hunting camp, but I really prefer to call it like a second home because I don't go there just during hunting season. I go there all during the year and love it up there. But you do too. Yours is outside Yazoo City. Is that right?
That's correct. We were up there this past weekend, planning to go up this coming weekend, trying to get everything ready for the upcoming season, and just love working the land. Just one of those that really takes me back in time, helps me connect with who I am, and just a true love of getting dirt under my fingernails and worn out at the end of the day and just getting back in, just kind of like you. It's not just a hunting camp. It's another home and just something that we have thoroughly enjoyed.
Well, listen, man, I believe this, and I know you do too, because you've passed it down in your family, and that's how you got it. But this love of the outdoors, it's not about the hunting or just the fishing. It's something about, it's a divine a divine experience. Will Primos described, you probably have heard me say this before. You may have heard Will say it, but he described turkey hunting as being in a prayer. He said he often thought that I've got to do a prayer and thank God for this moment, but then he realizes he doesn't really need to do that because he's actually in a prayer. He's in a divine moment, being out in the outdoors. And that's what it is for me. It's a great opportunity to connect my family. I believe a family that enjoys the outdoors together stays together. but it's getting back to our roots, and it's just something powerful about that, isn't there?
Certainly it is. It's just one of those that, people would look at that and think, well, God's not really that interested in you harvesting your deer or doing whatever you're doing, but we always stop and recognize and give thanks no matter what it is.
Listen,
years, and we continue to pass it down to the next generations.
You're a lifelong Hancock County resident, and you had the misfortune, might be, or maybe the opportunity to be a leader in a time when Hancock County was literally ground zero for the worst natural disaster in American history. As a chancery clerk there, you were first elected in 1996, and again, you retired last year. But you served a long time, man, and you saw a lot of change. And you, it'd be interesting when you look back on your time before Katrina and your time after Katrina as a leader in Hancock County. What comes to mind for you? How do you reflect about it?
That's a good question, and it's I think we could talk about that for days. It was one of those that at that time, Hancock County was really getting things going, and gaming had started, and we were really working along. Growth was steady in Hancock County, and we were just getting very comfortable in our role. And all of a sudden, here we are, ground zero. Where do we go from here? And I'll always remember, Ricky, it was just a touching moment in the Emergency Operations Center some 2 to 3 days after Hurricane Katrina hit. We were actually stationed at Hancock High School, and we were getting ready to start a meeting, had all the FEMA people in. We even had the president, former president, Senior Bush, that came by. But there was a gentleman that was coming down the hall. Somebody said, "There's someone here to see you," and we were very protective about who was coming in. And there was a tall gentleman, I still remember, with a pair of flip-flops on, a long T-shirt, khaki pants, T-shirt hanging out, hair was all over his head, and said he's coming to see you. And as I was looking as he was getting closer, I thought, I don't know who it is. He got closer. It was Leo Seal. And he said, "I came up here to see you because I know you're the one that will listen to this." He said, "Remember this. I was here when the hurricane hit in 1947. I was here when Betsy hit in 64. I was here when Camille hit in 69. All we did at that time was go back and try to rebuild what we had." He said, "Now is this opportunity to make it better than we've ever had it. Do not settle for just what we had, but hold out for what we can be." And it just stuck with me. And it was just really a moment at that time that I never forgot. And I went back to that conversation many times. And keep in mind, Ricky, those Katrina days, I was not only the Chancery Clerk, I was also the county administrator. So I was involved in a lot more than just the work of the Chancery Clerk's office. So it gave me an opportunity when we met with a lot of these people that came with these ideas. And, the Charrettes did a whole lot for us to say, look at these things. And it was just, far-reaching ideas. And as we look at them today, Ricky, reality. I mean, a lot of these things happen. I mean, putting a harbor north of the railroad tracks in Bay St. Louis, I mean, who's going to dream of that and who's going to come to it? Go down there and you'll see what's happened. And you go to some of these other cities along that coast and you see some of these things that took place to rebuild and think somebody had a vision that was beyond where we were in 2005. I'm very thankful for being a part of that. Back to your question, I think I look at that in those days of being in that comfortable, sleepy little situation to seeing the growth and where we are today. And it was just 2023 was just a time that I just said, it's probably a good time to slow this thing down and step back and just look at it and relive some of those days and be appreciative of where we are and where we're going. And it was not easy to walk away from that courthouse because I really loved that work. But I had a granddaughter, had first grandchild at 65 for my wife and me, and realizing that if we're going to ever enjoy any time, we've got to do it now. So we do a bit of traveling and enjoying granddaughter. In fact, we have her today. My wife just took her out. So it's just been a great time. But I look at those days from the early sleepy days of Hancock County to the hustle and bustle days that we're dealing with now. I'm just very thankful for being a little part of it. Well,
it was, just a lot to unwrap there. Haley Barbour often said that the the Chinese symbol, sort of like a yin yang symbol, the Chinese symbol for disaster was the same one for opportunity. And he would point that out to say, we don't want to build it back the way it is. I've quoted him many times at this very important special session that was held not long after Katrina, when he said, what will our kids and our kids' kids say of us? Will they say that we got it? And one of the great things about having these architects and planners come together for these charrettes we began to plant the seeds to say, I know it's hard to have these conversations when we don't even have the debris cleaned up yet, but let's start to think about what is possible so that infrastructure that we build back will support those efforts and all of that. So it's magic. Sometimes it took a long time to get where we are. It did, in fact, but boy, did it help us in those early days. Hey, when we come back, we'll continue our conversation with Tim Kellar from Hancock County. We'll see you after this. Welcome back to the Ricky Matthews Show from the Citizens Bank Studio. I have Tim Kellar with us, longtime leader who retired as Chancery Clerk back in last year, 2023, has so many stories to tell. We were chatting a little bit about Hurricane Katrina. One of the things, Tim, that I love about doing this show, this long form show, is the opportunity to what I would refer to as sort of capture a digital history book. So, for example, I had 3 shows with George Schlogel. The last one not long before he passed away. He was such a long-term friend of mine, and so many lessons learned. But the fact that I've captured those, his story on this show is something our kids and our kids' kids will be able to look back on now. And I think that's important. I wish I would have had the opportunity to capture a show with Leo Seal. You mentioned Leo. Yeah, Leo, I was talking to John Hairston on maybe on the show, but we've certainly had this conversation off the show. I regretted, and I mentioned this to George as well, when I left the Sun Herald, I tried to leave the new publisher with just about all the files and everything the way, so they could pick it up, working with my former assistant and be able to kind of move forward in an easy transition. But one of the files I forgot to get was a file full of handwritten notes from Leo. Leo always sent me handwritten notes about he'd read the paper and have a thought about something and send me a handwritten note about it. But for him to come and tell you that, that's a powerful statement to make, to say, let's don't lose the opportunity to build something better this time. What vision people like him and George and others had. We're so lucky to have had them here, weren't we?
Just next to Haley Barber, I think, you're looking at Leo Seal, he had that history, and he had that he had the respect of everybody along that coast, and I think Ricky, with him, the compliment that I could give him, he was not out for Leo Seal. He was out for that coastal area in Mississippi in general, and then he expanded to the southeast, and then just go right on and on. But he was such a visionary that he just. And it was not ever, as I sat back and looked at him, and I kept some of my notes, by the way. I'm glad you mentioned that he had sent me through the years. But he was just one of those that I never saw, we need to do this because it's going to help Leo Seal, or going to help Hancock Bank, or, we need to do this because it's the right thing to do. And I think we can all take a lot from that. And just
what he did to shepherd that bank, Hancock Bank, along, bringing people like George Schlogel along, bringing people like John Hairston along, and see what it is today. I mean, I think he would be so proud to see what has come of that bank, because the reality is Hancock needed to become a regional bank to survive in this banking world that we live in today. And John and that board have done such a terrific job of shepherding through so much change over so much time. That's been something to watch, hasn't it?
It certainly has. It certainly has. Still my home bank, and it has been for many years. And I tell you, they've been good for the entire community, and they're good civic-minded people as well. So that's something that I put a lot into that. When you see people that want to help the community and help the area that they're serving, so certainly they have been.
Hey, okay. So then you think one of the things that Leo felt so strongly about was the notion of science and math. That's why he felt so high about the Infinity Center and what was happening there, about the opportunity to educate kids about space and the importance of math and science. And of course, Stennis Space Center. He's such an advocate for Stennis Space Center. And I've often said, I mean, think about this economic engine that is coastal Mississippi with Stennis Space Center and all the blue chip industries that are part of that, and then Ingalls and Chevron on the other side as bookmarks, and then of course in the middle you've got gaming and hospitality and all of that. Stennis Space Center, though, for you, this fourth generation Hancock County, and Stennis Space Center is more than just an important part of our economic engine. It literally changed the course of history for your family, didn't it?
Certainly did, Ricky. There's quite some story to tell that went along with the Stennis Space Center coming in. Of course, when it came in, it was Mississippi Test Facility, and it was so there's some interesting stories that could be shared about that. My father was on the Hancock County Board of Supervisors during those days, so some very interesting stories that I could share with you about those about Stennis first coming in and breaking ground and some of the negotiations that took place for them to come in and actually pay the county for the bridges and the roads and the improvements that had been made. So, quite some stories that I could share with you.
But look, the vision at the time to create this incredible buffer zone, man, it came to fruition because one of the biggest issues in testing facilities across the United States is encroachment. And they had the vision to understand that. But as it relates to your family, Santa Rosa, well, I tell you, I don't know, we're probably getting too close to the end of the segment, but we can start now. Kyle's saying no. I thought he was about to show me the timer. But anyway, this story of Santa Rosa is an important story for your family, isn't it?
It certainly is. It was one of those times, even as a youngster, that I knew there was something big. And of course, if you remember, and I don't know how much has been shared through the years, but John Stennis came down and met with the people in those communities. You had Westonia, you had Napoleon, Gainesville, Logtown, Santa Rosa. And he basically pulled together a community meeting, and a lot of the adults went to it. I'd have loved to have gone to it, but I was a youngster in those days. And he basically sold that idea to the people, and that's the way that this thing came to be. Had it not been someone with the respect that John Stennis had, it would have been a lot harder. But there were hard times. Still remember my grandfather was born in 1880. One of those that had been on that homestead for his entire life, and they actually come in, and it was in 63, 64 time frame, and he had made the statement. He said, "Now moving's for you young people. It's not for me." And he literally had a heart attack with his home jacked up, and getting ready to be put on a trailer and moved out. Had a heart attack, passed away that evening. Sure did.
Oh man, so it just.
There are a lot of those stories like that could be shared and told, and it was hard on a lot of those people back in those days, and to get uprooted and leave those homesteads was certainly not easy.
Yeah, because to create, people don't imagine this, but to create the buffer zones, you had to literally go into established cities and neighborhoods and displace all of those people. That's what making a buffer zone is all about, and. It's an incredible part of your family history, though, isn't it?
Certainly is. It's but I'll stop and look at where would we be today in Hancock County if we wouldn't have a Stennis Space Center, and what it's done for this area. It's put us on the world map, not just a national map. It's put us on the world map, and there's so much good that's come from that. But it's kind of hard to see it in those days when you're so attached to the land and to the homesteads, and all of a sudden realize we got to go start new, and especially those that are up in the years. It'd be a little harder for me now to pull up roots and go totally and get started again. But so much good has come from that Stennis Space Center. So I mean, I would have to sit back at this point in my life and say that it was a good move, and it's certainly has brought more to the area than than what we would have thought in those early days.
Hey, listen, when you learned that Peter Greenberg was going to do the Hidden Coast documentary and that you may have an opportunity to be part of it, did you have the opportunity to do some research on Peter to really appreciate his work around the world?
I actually did. I went back and started YouTubing what he had done around the globe. I mean, he'd go to a lot of these countries, and he is just an amazing individual, Ricky. I mean, he's got so much knowledge. I couldn't quite get my arms around where we were going with the section I played in the American Hidden Coast, but they'd gotten with me. It was some people from our tourism group, Gulf Coast Tourism Group, and I said, "Hey, we've looked at it over and felt like you were the right one for this part in the show." And I said, "Well, it's right up my alley, and it's right where I've got some a lot of knowledge of that area." And so I started researching how he went about his business, kind of the way he presented himself, and kind of what can we do to make this show maybe interesting to people around the world. And of course, by the way, he said this America's Hidden Coast, Mississippi America's Hidden Coast, will reach 103 million views on PBS. So I mean, that's a lot of views. But I felt like overall it was a very positive light on Mississippi, but very much a positive light on the Gulf Coast. But as I started looking at that, and I thought, now where are we going to go with this old ghost town of log town that I have knowledge of, and without just having to tell the story. And so I mentioned to Gordon, his producer, and said, "Hey, we're down to all these little mom and pop meals, and by the way, I've got one and we operate it."
Hey, why don't we do that? We'll pick it up right there on the other side, because it is an interesting approach that Peter takes, and we'll focus on that and then your role in that documentary when we continue our conversation with Tim Kellar after this break. We'll see you after this. Welcome back to the Ricky Matthews Show from the Citizens Bank studio. I'm visiting with my old friend Tim Kellar, longtime leader in Hancock County, fourth generation Hancock Countyan, and was featured actually on this most recent documentary that's going to go to a lot of people around the globe as a result of Peter Greenberg doing the production of it. And I mean, just a great personality on top of that. But coming back to Peter's approach, Tim, he loves to, he said his main message is he doesn't want to come in and just read the tourism information and go to the tourism places, even though he may feature some of them. But his goal is to find the hidden gems inside the hidden coast. And so, I thought it was cool that he, retraced Walter Anderson's steps along the way and, enjoyed some of the food and told some of those stories and whatever. But I'm not surprised after talking to him that he would be enthralled by the story that you could tell going to that ghost town, because by doing that, he got to mention Stennis. He got to go on the Pearl River. He got to tell the story of what's really going on in the rural areas of Mississippi. It was fascinating, wasn't it?
It very much was. It was very interesting, and I guess to be a part of that and see all the production and think, now how are they going to make anything interesting out of all this, and then to see the final product was pretty amazing. Sure was.
I loved, in fact, because we at one of the farms that I don't lease anymore because we moved to a slightly better one. But it had an old running well, and it just ran all the time. It'd been running for 100 years, maybe. I don't know how long this thing had been running, but we would just go over there and bring people there and drink from it. And we'd always get water from there. We'd keep milk jugs and get lots of water from there. But y'all did the same thing. You went and drank from an old well that had been there for as long as you can remember, huh?
Now, Ricky, the stories are that it was actually drilled back in the 1850s when that sawmill was just largest in the world. Now imagine that on the Pearl River in little old Hancock County, having the largest sawmill that covered the globe with lumber, 100,000 board feet per day being produced from there. But that well was basically what provided for that community, which just a little added part to that. This show certainly has gotten some interest because there's a group that has come in now, has built a concrete slab around that well site to make it a lot more accessible for people. So I think we'll have that well there for many years to come. And as I said on the documentary and the show, that I hope many more generations of my family get to drink from that well. So it looks like that's a possibility now.
A true and real ghost town for sure. So it's just a great story to tell, isn't it?
It certainly is. Certainly is. And that's just one of the, that's one of the ghost towns. All the others I'd mentioned earlier, the Westonia, Napoleon, Gainesville, all those others, same way. It's just, and I'm one of the ones that was young when we actually left there, but I still got lots of memories of the old homes and the home sites and the people that lived there, and some of the stories that have been told through the years. And I've been a local historian my whole life. In fact, I'm looking at some of the books here that were written about that area, that there was a gentleman by the name of S.G. Thigpen in Picayune that wrote a lot of these stories, like, work and play in Grandpa's days and Pearl River, and, just lots of stories that had been passed down through the years. But a lot of the interesting stories from those ghost town areas now.
It's great that you're able to tell them. And by the way, I think you did. You may have been the star of the show. You did a terrific job of telling that story. When you talk about your love of the outdoors, and when I think about being up in the Mississippi Delta, there's something about being in touch with your roots. And when I think about that, I think about, going out and getting your own wood and go and get your own wood sawmilled and having, rough cut pine and whatever else you might want to do. But it's only fitting that you would have your own sawmill. It just fits for you, doesn't it?
Well, it does. And I have made this statement through the years. Had I lived in a cold climate, I would have been in the wood business in some fashion, more than likely in the firewood business. I just love cutting firewood and splitting firewood. In fact, we've got a big firewood operation going here at my place right now. And you end up with these sawmills with lots of byproduct. And rather than burning it and just doing away with it, we're turning it into firewood. And so many people are needing firewood, and keeps me active, keeps something for me to do every day. But it's so fitting that we just through the years, my great-grandparents, my grandparents, my father, they'd all been in the wood business. And by the time I came along there, they kind of dwindled to not being there, any business there like it used to be. But I'd always been drawn to that kind of work and still enjoy it. And up on our farm in Yazoo County, we've got lots of black walnut, lots of cedar, lots of rainbow poplar, and we get lots of orders here, custom orders at our sawmill. So we gather a lot of the product off our farm up there and come here and actually mill it, and it's quite an operation.
There's nothing like woodwork. I mean, especially done if you know where the tree was and you bring the tree in and you work off of that. I just always have loved that. We recently went to we spent time in Grand Tetons and Yellowstone and all that. We've done it we've gone from the Bozeman direction, Jackson direction. We did it from the Idaho direction this past year with the whole family. And we rented a 3-story log cabin. And Tim, inside this cabin, the woodwork inside of it was unbelievable, man. And once you are drawn to that, I don't know if that's just something that's innate inside of us, that we're drawn to sort of our roots in that way. I'm just blown away by it. I guess you would go into a log cabin like that too, and just marvel at the artistry of it.
No doubt. My wife, not so much as me, but I probably would have built a log cabin as my home had she gone along with that. But that didn't quite suit her, even though our place up in Yazoo County, I've just kind of turned her loose and let her make that her little second home up there. We've still done some of those rustic things as well. In fact, I've got a son today that's building some rough cut lumber, live edge shelves to actually go into our cabin up there. So we had quite a bit of that, and it came right off the farm. So that's even more means a whole lot more to me than getting it from a hardware store.
So is the sawmill something that's kind of like operating every day?
Well, it could operate every day. Summertime, it gets a little bit warm out there. It's open air sawmill, of course. But we've got two orders for customers out there right now that we're just waiting until the weather's a little better to start cutting. We cut some pine, but we mostly do the custom cut on the others: cypress, cedar, black walnut, poplar, cherry, things along those lines. So, but it's not something we do every day. It's something that we'll do sometimes 3 or 4 days, afternoons a week. My son that really runs he's the sawyer, and of course there's a lot of jokes that go along with the wood business. So he's the sawyer and I'm the pilot, and people look at me and say, "Pilot?" I said, "He saws it and I pilot up." So I'm the pilot at the sawmill. So, but he owns his insurance business, and that's an afternoon kind of family thing that we do.
It's fun to do stuff like that together, man.
And weekends, give me an opportunity to be with my.
Same for me, man. I mean, like some of the best parts about being in the Delta for me is when I go exploring with my sons and put up bow stands and work on new food plots, and I just can't get enough of that. And to me, it's not about that I'm doing; it's about the time I'm spending with my family. It's just so awesome.
I can relate to that, certainly.
I know you can. Listen, you think about your time and as a leader in Hancock County. I remember after Hurricane Katrina, the Stennis Institute started a process, you'll remember it well, about the possibility of bringing Bay St. Louis and Waveland together.
Oh, yes.
It lasted about 6 months, and it was disbanded for good reason. And we learned a powerful lesson, didn't we, after Hurricane Katrina, that buildings don't make a community, the people do. And as long as people are involved in the process and they have a connection to the land, the buildings aren't what mattered. It's the memory and that connection that mattered. And you got to see that up front and personal, didn't you?
I certainly did, and I was drawn into some of those meetings. And I tell you, they weren't real pleasant. It was, and Ricky, I don't know how much you kept up with that, but there was an annexation lawsuit that had been filed just within weeks before Hurricane Katrina hit. Bay St. Louis and Waveland had both announced that they were going to do some annexation. So, there was quite a bit of tension during that time, and then getting on the backside of that, and you get the Stennis Institute came in and said it only makes sense. Y'all need to look this over. And so it was certainly not pleasant.
No, it didn't go well. But it's a great learning. It's a really important learning to help remind people about the connection they had to this place, and no one's taken that away from me. I can assure you. Hey, when we come back on the other side, we'll continue our conversation in the final segment with Tim Kellar. We'll see you after this. Welcome back to the Ricky Matthews Show from the Citizens Bank Studio. We're visiting with longtime Hancock County leader Tim Kellar, who, by the way, in 2023 was Citizen of the Year in Hancock County. But if we were to spend time just talking about all the different organizations he's been part of during his tenure, both in terms of working in the community, working in areas of the outdoors, and just in general, it would take the rest of the show, literally the rest of the show. But suffice it to say, he's got a long pedigree of incredible focus on being someone who loves his community, Hancock County, and he is, he's someone who literally lived by example. You mentioned, Tim, recently that you finished the America's Great Storm by Haley Barbour, that I had the opportunity to write the foreword to, but. Boy, I'm so proud of Haley for capturing not only the work that was happening on the ground here, but also the amazing amount of work that had to be done in Washington to be able to get us the tens of billions of dollars that we needed. He captured it so well, and he didn't want it to be about himself. He wanted it to really be about how leaders come together after the worst natural disaster in American history. But, man, we were lucky to have him, and I'm thrilled that we captured the story in his book, aren't you?
Great job. I'll tell you, I held on to every little word and some of the things that he passed on. Just amazing to see what all had to take place for the help to make its way down to us. I mean, he went up and he knew all the right buttons to push and people to call on, people to pull together. And I love the part that he had talked about some of the people that he had gotten on opposite sides with some of these people. He said, but one thing you never do in this world, you never make permanent enemies. You go ahead and recognize the fact that you may be on different pages and have different points of view, but do not draw that line in the sand that this is a permanent enemy, because you don't know when you got to go back. And some of those people that he had shared some of those differences of opinions were the ones that he pulled in that helped us and stepped it up for us. So he led by example, no doubt. I mean,
they helped us in big ways. In fact, he and I have had numerous conversations, not just on this show, but just between the two of us, about how it might be almost impossible to achieve that goal today, because the bipartisan support that was required to get through this was truly remarkable, and he did it. He used to say that Ronnie Musgrove, God bless Ronnie, I consider him a good friend. Ronnie Musgrove said that one of the worst things about Haley Barbour is he's a former lobbyist, and the best thing that ever happened to us is that he was a former lobbyist, and certainly in the wake of Hurricane Katrina. Hey, have you ever considered, capturing your learnings, sitting in that incredible catbird seat in Hancock County before and after the storm? Have you ever talked about maybe writing your story?
Well, I actually have put together just behind the scene about 2-week span leading up to Hurricane Katrina, the actual events taking place when the gravel was blowing off the Emergency Operations Center. I was on the air with WLOX when it got knocked off the air. So that's the last word that a lot of people heard from the Emergency Operations Center during that time was that, and I was just sharing with them that the water was coming up, lights were out, of course. We were taking on water in the building. The trees were falling, were going down around us, and we were still holding our own at that time, and then we went off the air. So that was on a Sunday night. So it was Thursday before I ever got out of that whole area and made it home for my wife to see that I'd made it. My brother-in-law, was a strange story. The word had gotten out that I was last seen swimming out of the second story of the courthouse when the water was up high. And those kind of stories get started. And of course, he'd come see my wife and say, have you heard from him? Because he knew that I didn't make it. So when I showed up on Thursday night, almost midnight, when my wife realized that I had, but she had not heard the story. So there were quite some touchy stories that could be told. But I just shared in my journal about 2 weeks of behind the scenes, some of those stories that took place. And I'll tell you this, Gene Taylor was our congressman at that time, and he was a tremendous asset for us. And he would spend a big part of his days in the Emergency Operations Center with us, with the people from FEMA and Homeland Security. And he knew he could speak the language, and he knew the right buttons to push, and he knew what could be done and what was being told to us. And he was a tremendous asset. And I'll always have a lot of respect for Gene, dear friend of mine, but I have a lot of respect for him always, but especially during that time, because he was able to push some buttons and get some things done.
Yeah, I had a good relationship with him, and Haley even recognized him. Gene was a Democrat, a blue dog Democrat, albeit, but it's still a Democrat. But still, we worked together across political lines and worked together. You reminded me, it took us 2 weeks to find all of our employees at the Sun Herald. Mm-hmm. And every time one that we had been looking for showed up, it was all tears. But you should really consider writing that down. But look, we're out of time. Hopefully we'll get an opportunity to spend some time together again. But Tim, it's been great to catch up with you, my friend.
Certainly great to reconnect with you, Ricky, and I wish you well. And keep doing what you're doing. You shed a lot of light, positive light for all of us along this coast. So
yeah, keep it up. I appreciate what you're doing, and thanks for a wonderful career of contribution to coastal Mississippi. Listen, have a great day, and we will see you tomorrow.
Thank you.